They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I prefer mine scalding hot, with a side of public humiliation and a garnish of social destruction. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how Calvin Reed, mild-mannered financial analyst and professional doormat, became the architect of the most spectacular marital meltdown Chicago's North Shore had seen in decades. It started on a Tuesday in February, the kind of gray, soul-crushing day that makes you question every life choice that led you to the frozen wasteland of Illinois. I was sitting in my home office, spreadsheets dancing across my monitor, like numbers in a fever dream, when I heard Natalie's heels clicking across our hardwood floors with unusual urgency. "Calvin, I need to talk to you," she called from the bedroom, her voice carrying that particular tone wives use when they're about to announce something that will cost money or cause inconvenience. I saved my work and walked down the hall, finding her standing before our walk-in closet like a general surveying a battlefield. Clothes were scattered across our king-sized bed, dresses I'd never seen before, lingerie that definitely wasn't from our anniversary shopping trip to Nordstrom Rack. "What's all this?" I asked, gesturing at what looked like the aftermath of a fashion magazine explosion. Natalie turned, and I noticed she'd done something different with her makeup. Smoky eyes, glossy lips, the works. At 3:30 on a Tuesday afternoon. "I have a big business dinner tonight," she said, holding up a black dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. "Trent is taking the whole marketing team to Le Bernardin. This could be huge for my career." Trent Shepard, her boss, the kind of guy who wore Italian suits to Casual Friday and drove a Maserati with vanity plates that read MRKTNG1. I'd met him exactly once, at last year's company Christmas party, where he'd spent the entire evening name-dropping clients and adjusting his Rolex. "Since when do business dinners require Victoria's Secret?" I asked, nodding toward the lacy black number peeking out from under the dress. Natalie's laugh was sharp, brittle. "God, Calvin, you're so paranoid. It's called dressing professionally. Some of us care about making a good impression." The barb hit its mark, as intended. Natalie had been perfecting the art of the casual insult for months now, each comment designed to remind me that while she was climbing the corporate ladder in her designer heels, I was stuck analyzing quarterly reports in my home office, wearing the same khakis I'd bought at Target 3 years ago. "Right," I said. "Professional. Got it." She was already turning back to the mirror, applying lipstick with surgical precision. "Don't wait up. These things tend to run late." I watched her for a moment, this woman I'd been married to for 12 years, and felt something cold settle in my chest. It wasn't jealousy exactly, more like recognition, the kind you get when you finally see the picture hidden in one of those optical illusion puzzles. "Have fun networking," I said, and left her to her preparations. Back in my office, I stared at the computer screen without seeing it. Natalie had been different lately. New clothes, new perfume, new attitude. She'd started going to the gym at 6 a.m., something she'd never done in the decade I'd known her. Her phone was always face down now, and she'd changed her passcode from our anniversary date to something I didn't know. I'm not a suspicious man by nature. I'm methodical, analytical, the kind of person who reads the fine print and keeps receipts. But I'm not paranoid. At least I hadn't been until my wife started dressing like she was auditioning for a role in a music video about successful businesswomen who definitely weren't cheating on their husbands. The front door slammed at 5:15, followed by the throaty purr of Natalie's BMW pulling out of our driveway. I waited 10 minutes, then picked up my phone and called my mother-in-law. "Carol, it's Calvin. Listen, I know this is last minute, but would you and Richard like to have dinner at Le Bernardin tonight? My treat." There was a pause. "That's very generous, Calvin. But isn't that terribly expensive?" "Don't worry about it. I just closed a big account." The lie came easier than it should have. "I thought it might be nice for you to see where Natalie's having her business dinner. You could surprise her." Carol Reed loved few things more than surprising her daughter at important career moments. Within an hour, I had a confirmed reservation for two at Le Bernardin, 8 o'clock seating, table with a clear view of the main dining room. I spent the evening working or pretending to work, checking my phone every few minutes. At 9:30, my screen lit up with a text from Carol. It was a photo. Natalie was sitting on Trent Shepard's lap in a corner booth, her arms around his neck, his hand resting possessively on her thigh. They were kissing with the kind of passion typically reserved for airport reunions and romance novel covers. In the foreground, I could see Richard's shocked face, his mouth hanging open like a fish gasping for air. The accompanying text was brief. "Calvin, I'm so sorry." I set the phone down and laughed. Actually, laughed out loud, a sound that echoed through our empty house like a gunshot. Not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was screaming, and I had neighbors to consider. So there it was. My wife of 12 years, the woman who'd promised to love, honor, and cherish me through sickness and health, was playing tonsil hockey with her boss in one of Chicago's most expensive restaurants. And she'd been stupid enough to do it at the exact place she'd told me she'd be, wearing the dress she'd modeled for me like I was some kind of clueless accessory to her deception. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat in my leather chair. The one Natalie always complained made our living room look like a middle-aged man's fantasy. She wasn't wrong. It was comfortable, practical, and completely unfashionable. Kind of like me. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Carol. "We're leaving. Richard can't stop staring. What do you want us to do?" I typed back, "Go home. Don't say anything to Natalie yet. I'll handle this." Handle this. As if adultery was a quarterly budget variance or a problematic pivot table. But that's what I do. I handle things. I analyze problems, develop solutions, implement strategies. And right now, Natalie Reed had just become the biggest problem in my portfolio. I was still sitting there, bourbon warming in my hand, when I heard her car in the driveway. The digital clock on the cable box read 11:47 p.m. She'd been gone for over 6 hours. Plenty of time for dinner and whatever came after. The front door opened with a soft click, followed by the whisper of stockings against fabric as she tried to tiptoe through the house in her heels. I didn't move, didn't call out. I just sat in my chair in the dark living room and waited. She made it halfway up the stairs before curiosity got the better of her. "Calvin, are you still awake?" "In here," I called softly. She appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the hall light. Her lipstick was gone, her hair slightly mussed, despite obvious attempts to fix it. The black dress was wrinkled in interesting places. "How was your business dinner?" I asked. "Good, really good. Trent thinks I'm ready for the senior coordinator position." She was trying too hard to sound casual, her words coming just a beat too fast. "That's wonderful. Your parents would be so proud." Something flickered across her face. "My parents?" They love hearing about your career success, all that networking paying off." She shifted her weight, and I caught a whiff of cologne that definitely wasn't mine. Something expensive and cloying. The olfactory equivalent of a Maserati with vanity plates. "I'm exhausted," she said. "I'm going to shower and go to bed." "Good idea. You'll want to be fresh tomorrow." She hesitated, perhaps sensing something in my tone, but fatigue and guilt won out over curiosity. I listened to her footsteps on the stairs, the sound of running water, the soft click of our bedroom door closing. I finished my bourbon and made a mental note to buy more. Something told me I was going to need it. I've always been a light sleeper, but that night I didn't sleep at all. I lay in our guest bedroom. I'd moved there months ago, claiming my snoring was keeping Natalie awake, and stared at the ceiling, listening to my wife's peaceful breathing through the thin walls. She slept like a baby. Apparently, adultery was more restful than I'd imagined. At 6 a.m., my phone rang. Carol's name flashed on the screen. "Calvin, honey, I didn't sleep a wink. Richard's been pacing all night. What are we going to do?" I sat up, running a hand through my hair. "What do you want to do?" "I want to march over there and shake some sense into her. This is insane, Calvin. That man is married. He has children. And you, God, you don't deserve this." It was nice to hear someone say it, even if it was my mother-in-law. Carol Reed had never been my biggest fan. I wasn't successful enough, ambitious enough, exciting enough for her precious daughter. But apparently, public adultery was where she drew the line. I need to think about this, I said. Can you and Richard keep quiet for a few days? Just until I figure out my next move? Of course. But Calvin, don't let her make a fool of you. You're worth more than that. After she hung up, I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, looking out at the snow-covered yard. Our house was a colonial in Winnetka, the kind of place young couples dream about when they're planning their perfect suburban life. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, a 2-car garage, and a mortgage that would outlive us both. Natalie had wanted this house. Needed it, she'd said, for her image. Marketing coordinators in her company didn't live in condos or starter homes. They lived in places that said success and stability and worthy of promotion. I'd signed the papers because I loved her, because I wanted her to be happy, because I was stupid enough to think that giving her what she wanted would make her want me. The coffee was bitter, but I drank it anyway. I had work to do. My friend Jules Martinez had been a Chicago PD detective for 15 years before he retired early to open a private investigation firm. We'd met at a neighborhood barbecue 3 years ago, bonded over our shared appreciation for bourbon and our mutual bewilderment at our wives' social ambitions. Jules was the kind of guy who noticed things, details, inconsistencies, the sort of person you wanted on your side when your world was falling apart. I called him at 8 a.m. Reed, you're up early for a guy who works in his pajamas. I need a favor, Jules, a professional favor. The tone of my voice must have registered because his casual banter disappeared. What's going on? I think Natalie's having an affair. Silence, then. You think, or you know? I told him about the dinner, the photo, the new clothes, and changed behavior. Jules listened without interrupting, making occasional humming sounds that could have been sympathy or professional interest. You want me to follow her? He asked when I finished. I want you to help me build a case. Documentation, evidence, the works. If I'm going to blow up my marriage, I want to make sure I'm holding all the cards when the dust settles. This isn't about divorce lawyers and alimony, is it? Jules knew me too well. Maybe not entirely. Calvin, whatever you're thinking, I'm not thinking anything violent or illegal. I just want the truth. And I want everyone else to know it too. There was another pause. Okay, I can do that. But it's going to cost you. How much? A bottle of that 18-year-old Macallan you've been hoarding, and you buy lunch for the next month. Deal. We met at a diner in Evanston an hour later. Jules looked exactly like Central Casting's idea of an ex-cop. Thick mustache, tired eyes, and a gut that suggested he'd discovered the joys of civilian life. He slid a manila folder across the table. I made some calls. Your boy Trent Shepard is a piece of work. 3 affairs that I could verify, all with subordinates. His wife Lana filed for separation twice, but never followed through. Word is she's got some kind of evidence stash, waiting for the right moment to take him to the cleaners. I opened the folder. Photos, financial records, employment history. Jules was thorough. Here's the interesting part, he continued, stabbing his eggs with unnecessary violence. Shepard's company has a strict policy about supervisor relationships, like career-ending strict. If HR gets wind of this, both him and Natalie are toast. How would HR get wind of it? Jules grinned, and for a moment I could see the cop he used to be. Anonymous tips are a beautiful thing, especially when they come with photographic evidence. I thought about Carol's picture. Natalie draped across Trent like a cheap suit. What kind of evidence? The kind that gets people fired and blacklisted. The kind that makes sure everyone in their professional circle knows exactly what kind of people they're dealing with. I closed the folder and signaled for the check. I need to think about this. Don't think too long, Calvin. These things have a way of getting messier the longer you wait. I drove home through the gray Chicago morning, Jules's words echoing in my head. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd made my decision. Natalie was in the kitchen, dressed for work in a new outfit I didn't recognize. She looked up from her coffee with the kind of bright smile that would have fooled me a week ago. Good morning, honey. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Hey, I was thinking we should have dinner with your parents this weekend. It's been too long. Her smile flickered. This weekend? I might have to work. Big project coming up. Another business dinner? Possibly. I nodded and poured myself coffee. Well, maybe they could join you. I'm sure they'd love to see where you're networking these days. The coffee mug slipped from her hand, shattering on the kitchen tiles. Coffee splashed across her new shoes, dark stains spreading like guilt across the white leather. Shit, she muttered, grabbing paper towels. These are brand new. I'll clean it up, I said. You don't want to be late for work. She looked at me for a long moment, something unreadable in her expression. Then she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Calvin? Yeah? We should talk tonight when I get home. Looking forward to it. After she left, I cleaned up the coffee and broken ceramic, then sat down at my computer. I had an anonymous email to compose and a marriage to end. But first, I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly who Natalie Reed really was. The beauty of working from home is that you can orchestrate someone's professional destruction while wearing sweatpants and drinking coffee from a mug that says, World's Okayest Husband. Irony? Thy name is Calvin Reed. I spent the morning crafting the perfect anonymous tip to Natalie's HR department. Not too detailed, that would seem suspicious, but specific enough to trigger an investigation. I included Carol's photo, cropped to remove her shocked face, but keeping the timestamp and location data intact. The subject line read, Policy Violation, Marketing Department. The body was simple. Thought you should know that Regional Marketing Director Trent Shepard is having an inappropriate relationship with his subordinate, Natalie Reed. Photo attached was taken last night at Le Bernardin. This violates company policy regarding supervisor relationships. A concerned employee. I hit send at 10:47 a.m. and immediately felt lighter, like I'd been holding my breath for days and could finally exhale. My phone rang 20 minutes later. Jules, you did it, didn't you? I have no idea what you're talking about. Calvin, I can hear the satisfaction in your voice. You sound like a cat who just discovered the canary comes pre-seasoned. Maybe I'm just having a good morning. Uh-huh. Well, your good morning's about to get better. I just got off the phone with a contact at Natalie's company. HR called an emergency meeting. Shepard's been suspended pending investigation, and they're interviewing everyone in the marketing department. I leaned back in my chair, grinning at the ceiling. How unfortunate. There's more. Apparently, Shepard's wife Lana showed up at his office this morning with divorce papers. Caused quite a scene. Security had to escort her out, but not before she announced to the entire floor that her husband was a cheating piece of garbage who couldn't keep it in his pants. Sounds like she's having a bad day, too. Calvin, you beautiful, vindictive bastard. I'm almost proud of you. After Jules hung up, I made myself a sandwich and settled in to wait. Natalie usually called me around lunch, a habit from our early marriage that had survived even as everything else crumbled. Today, I was particularly interested in hearing how her morning had gone. The call came at 12:15. Calvin. Her voice was tight, strained. Hey, honey, how's work? There's been a situation. Trent's been suspended. There's some kind of investigation. Oh no, what kind of investigation? HR won't say. They just keep asking questions about our working relationship, about after-hours meetings, about... She trailed off. About what? About whether I've ever had inappropriate contact with him. I made a sympathetic noise. That sounds serious. What did you tell them? The truth. That we have a professional relationship. That any meetings outside the office were work-related. Well, I'm sure it'll blow over. These things usually do. There was a long pause. Calvin, did you say anything to anyone about last night? What would I say? You had a business dinner. End of story. Another pause, longer this time. I might be home late tonight. This whole thing is a mess, and I need to figure out how to handle it. Of course. Take all the time you need. She hung up without saying goodbye. I finished my sandwich and got back to work, humming under my breath. It was shaping up to be a very good day. The next call came at 3 p.m. Carol. Calvin, I just got off the phone with Natalie. She's hysterical. Something about an investigation at work? Yeah, she mentioned that. Sounds like her boss is in some kind of trouble. She kept asking if I'd said anything to anyone about last night. I told her no, but Calvin... She knows. She knows we saw her. What did she say? She tried to explain it away. Said it wasn't what it looked like, that she'd had too much to drink, that it was a mistake. But Calvin, honey, we weren't born yesterday. That wasn't a drunken mistake. That was a woman who's been doing this for a while. I closed my eyes, feeling something twist in my chest. It was one thing to suspect, another to know, and something else entirely to have it confirmed by someone who'd watched Natalie grow up. What do you want me to do, Carol? I want you to protect yourself. Get a lawyer, document everything. Make sure she can't take advantage of you when this all comes out. Already on it. Good. And Calvin? Richard and I, we're on your side. Whatever happens, whatever you need, we're here. It was more support than I'd expected from my in-laws, and more than I probably deserved. I thanked her and hung up, then sat staring at my computer screen without seeing it. The thing about revenge is that it's supposed to feel good, sweet, satisfying, justified. But sitting there in my home office, listening to the silence of our empty house, all I felt was tired. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Lana Shepard. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. When and where? Starbucks on Green Bay Road. 1 hour. I'd never met Lana Shepard, but I recognized her immediately. She had the kind of sharp, expensive prettiness that money could buy and betrayal could destroy. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, but there was something brittle around her eyes that suggested she was holding herself together through sheer force of will. She was sitting in a corner booth, clutching a venti something with the desperation of a drowning woman holding a life preserver. You must be Calvin, she said as I approached. Her voice was steady, controlled, but I could hear the cracks underneath. Mrs. Shepard. Lana, please. We're about to become allies, I think. Formality seems pointless. I sat down across from her, studying her face. How did you get my number? I have my ways. The question is, how long have you known? About Natalie and your husband? Since last night. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Last night? God, you're lucky. I've known for 3 years. 3 years? Why didn't you? Leave him. Divorce him? Destroy him? She took a sip of her drink, her hands remarkably steady. Because I was waiting for the right moment, the right ammunition, and because, frankly, I was scared. Of what? Of being alone, of starting over, of admitting that I'd wasted 15 years of my life on a man who thinks fidelity is a type of investment account. She looked at me over her cup. But you know what I'm not scared of anymore? What? Making him pay for every lie, every betrayal. Every time he made me feel like I was crazy for suspecting what I knew was true. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. I want to destroy him, Calvin. Professionally, financially, socially. I want him to lose everything that matters to him. And I think you want the same thing for your wife. I leaned back, processing this. What are you proposing? A partnership. I have evidence, photos, emails, financial records showing he's been using company money to wine and dine his affairs. You have access to Natalie's communications, her schedule, her vulnerabilities. Together, we can make sure they both get exactly what they deserve. Which is? Public humiliation, professional ruin, social exile. She leaned forward, her eyes bright with something that might have been madness or might have been clarity. I want everyone to know what they are. I want their friends to cross the street to avoid them. I want their names to be synonymous with betrayal and stupidity. I thought about Natalie's new clothes, her changed passwords, her casual cruelty. I thought about 12 years of marriage reduced to a lie, a performance, a convenience. What did you have in mind? Lana smiled, and for the first time since I'd sat down, she looked genuinely happy. Oh, Calvin, we're going to have so much fun. The thing about scorched earth tactics is that they require patience, planning, and an absolute commitment to total destruction. Lucky for me, I had all three in abundance. Plus, a newly minted partner who brought a decade and a half of suppressed rage to our little conspiracy. Lana and I spent the next week planning Natalie and Trent's professional apocalypse with the thoroughness of generals preparing for war. She provided the intelligence, Years of documented affairs, financial irregularities, and a comprehensive list of every person Trent had screwed over in his climb up the corporate ladder. I provided the technical expertise and the inside knowledge of Natalie's habits, weaknesses, and social media presence. Our first target was the company's annual marketing conference, scheduled for the following Friday at the Palmer House. It was Natalie's big moment. She was presenting a campaign she'd been working on for months, hoping to impress the senior partners and secure her promotion. Trent, despite his suspension, was still planning to attend as a consultant, apparently believing his charm could overcome minor inconveniences like HR investigations. He's delusional, Lana said, scrolling through Trent's emails on her laptop. We were sitting in my kitchen, surrounded by printouts, photographs, and the detritus of our investigation. He actually thinks this will blow over. He sent an email to his golf buddies saying it's just office politics, and he'll be back at his desk by Monday. What about Natalie? According to her Instagram, she's focusing on her career and exciting new opportunities. Posted yesterday with a photo of her new Louboutin heels. Lana's smile was predatory. That those are going to look great when she's walking to the unemployment office. The beauty of our plan was its simplicity. We weren't going to sabotage Natalie's presentation or create some elaborate public confrontation. We were just going to make sure that everyone at the conference, colleagues, competitors, industry leaders, knew exactly what kind of people they were dealing with. Lana had created a comprehensive dossier documenting Trent's pattern of affairs, complete with dates, locations, and financial records, showing his use of company funds for personal entertainment. I had compiled a similar file on Natalie, including screenshots of her social media posts showing expensive gifts and trips that coincided with her business meetings with Trent. But the pièce de résistance was Carol's photograph, professionally enhanced and printed on high-quality paper, showing Natalie and Trent in their passionate embrace at Le Bernardin. It was art, really. Adultery as performance piece. How do we distribute this without it being traced back to us? I asked. Lana held up a flash drive. Anonymous email blast to every attendee, sent from a burner account through a VPN. The subject line will be, "Thought you should know. Marketing conference attendees." That's it. That's it. We let their reputations speak for themselves. The email went out Thursday night at 11:47 p.m., time to arrive in inboxes Friday morning, just as people were preparing for the conference. I spent the night lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was making a mistake. By morning, I had my answer. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Jules. Jesus Christ, Calvin, what did you do? Good morning to you, too. I just got off the phone with a buddy who works security at the Palmer House. They've had to post extra guards at the marketing conference because apparently someone leaked some very interesting photos to the entire guest list. How unfortunate. Natalie's company is in full damage control mode. They've already announced that both she and Shepard are being terminated, effective immediately. The conference organizers are trying to find a replacement presenter for Natalie's slot. I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. Terminated? Fired, canned, given the boot. Apparently the photo evidence was pretty compelling, and when combined with the financial irregularities Lana documented, it was enough for the company to cut ties immediately. And Natalie? Radio silence. Her phone's going straight to voicemail, and according to my contact, she never showed up to the conference. I hung up and padded to the kitchen, where I found a note on the counter in Natalie's handwriting. Gone to my parents. Need to think. Don't call. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, then made coffee and sat down to wait for the next phase of our plan to unfold. It didn't take long. The first call came from Richard, my father-in-law, at 8:30 a.m. Calvin, what the hell's going on? Natalie showed up here at 6 this morning, crying and carrying on about some photos and losing her job. She's saying you sabotaged her. Did she tell you why there were photos to leak? Silence. Then, she said it was a misunderstanding, that she'd had too much to drink and made a mistake. Richard, you were there. You saw what we saw. Does that look like a mistake to you? Another pause, longer this time. No, it doesn't. Then you know why I did what I did. Carol wants to talk to you. She's very upset. My mother-in-law's voice was tight with anger when she came on the line, but I quickly realized it wasn't directed at me. Calvin, honey, I am so sorry. We raised her better than this. I don't know what happened, what went wrong, but this is not the daughter we thought we knew. What did she tell you? A lot of nonsense about being set up and framed, but Calvin, we're not stupid. We saw what we saw, and no amount of crying and carrying on is going to change that. What happens now? Now? Now she needs to figure out how to put her life back together. And you need to decide what you want to do about your marriage. I already knew what I wanted to do, but I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. Can you keep her there for a few days? I need some time to think. Of course. And Calvin? Whatever you decide, Richard and I support you completely. The second call came an hour later. Lana, have you seen the news? What news? Check the Tribune's business section, online. I pulled up the website and found the article immediately. Marketing executives terminated following ethics investigation. It was a brief piece, professionally written, but it included enough details to make it clear that Natalie and Trent's affair was now public knowledge in Chicago's business community. How did this get to the press? I asked. I may have made a few calls to some journalist friends. Amazing how interested they are in stories about corporate corruption and abuse of power. Lana, this is justice, Calvin. This is what happens when people think they can lie and cheat and manipulate without consequences. She was right, but that didn't make it easier to process. In less than 24 hours, we'd destroyed 2 careers, ended a marriage, and made sure that Natalie and Trent's names would be forever associated with scandal and betrayal. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like